Greetings, this is Ron Smalek, and I'm reading Catching Fire. This is the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. I'm reading the book and giving you my thoughts on each chapter in groups of two. Hope you enjoy. These are my notes on chapter 25 of Catching Fire. The very first thing that I thought of in this chapter is Katniss is going back through her mind about how she's going to save Peeta or Peeta's going to save her, and that there can only be one victor. And I suddenly thought to myself, why is she still thinking that there can only be one victor? They proved at the end of the first Hunger Games that if they, get down to two people and then try to kill each other, so there's no victor, the Capitol will basically, not win in the end because they will be martyrs for the cause, right? So wouldn't she have been keeping an eye out this whole time for some way to kill herself and Peeta at the same time, like the berries? Would she have been, looking for something and sort of at least thinking in her mind, like planning it, even if she wasn't going to go through with that? And would Haymitch have suspected that she was going to do something, or would the Capitol have suspected she was going to do something like that? And therefore, maybe not put her in the games because they knew that she's just that smart. Because so far this Quarter Quell, yes, the map is interesting, but it doesn't seem like it's that geared to kill her off. So I don't know. I just was thinking about that. We see more bread arrive, and there are 24 rolls that come from District 3, so there's definitely some kind of message there, but I don't know what it is yet. Katniss basically decides at this point that they have to get away, so she pretends / teaches Peeta how to swim, and she basically doesn't understand what's the motivation between the Alliance. And so getting away at this point is going to be her best option. But Peeta, through not a lot of effort, convinces her to wait until Brutus and Enobria are dead before they run away, and she basically agrees on the spot. I'm not sure what I would do in that situation, but I think it would that would be a tough call for me as well. We learn that BT has an idea for an electrocution trap, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I immediately thought, how thick is this wire, and will the current really be strong enough to travel all that way, and will it actually work through the wet sand, and will it actually, kill all the fish, eliminating them as a food source, because that would take a huge amount of electricity. So Peeta questions that as well, but obviously this must be realistic, or the author would probably be getting a lot of flack for it right now. So Katniss senses that Finnick will not agree to go along with the BT's plan unless Johanna also agrees. Finally, they all do decide to go on together. And the other thing that I was worried about here is that BT basically described his plan out loud, so anyone watching and the Capitol would know exactly what he's trying to do with the tree, electrocuting the other victors, and they would have a chance to thwart it. So I thought this was actually a pretty risky plan, and I'm surprised that no one stepped in to do anything from the Capitol before it came to fruition. They do some last, food gathering of fish, etc., before the fish are all going to be killed by electricity. And as they're digging through oysters, Peeta finds a pearl and gives it to Katniss. I don't know what the significance to this is, other than the obvious gift, and then what she feels and sees having received the gift. But I guess seeming a little bit overkill. He just happens to find a pearl. I don't know how abundant pearls really are, but I do imagine that this whole area would have had to have been, kind of terraformed whenever they built the games. So the oysters here couldn't have been here that very long, but I know I'm being pretty nitpicky. Peeta realizes that Katniss is still going to save him, and he has a nice line. He says the locket didn't work, and she basically agrees. You know, it worked, but it basically cemented her the opposite way to stick with her plan. They get more bread, and again, 24 bread from District 3. I didn't think too long and hard about it, other than 24 hours a day, and 24 divided by 3 is 8, so perhaps they had to go to the 8 o'clock position for something. Um, Ironically, there are 8 tributes left at this point, but I don't think that's the obvious message. The other thing I noted was that whenever Katniss takes the pearl and leaves, when they leave this area, she has the parachute with her. So I'm wondering if that's going to come into play later or not. Chapter 26, we find out that BT's plan is actually a little bit more complex. Katniss and Johanna have to take the spool of wire through the jungle back to the beach while he and Peeta and Finnick do something else at the tree. I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. I was surprised. I'm not really sure I would have trusted them to take the wire off into the woods if I was him. As they're going through the woods, unwinding the wire, and this part bugged me a little bit because I wonder how taut the wire would have really been. Someone cuts the wire, I think from above or something, and it seems like the wire just like snaps and recoils. It had to have been wound pretty darn tight through the trees to make that much of a bounce back. Johanna forces Katniss to the ground. Katniss was hit by something in the head. Johanna starts cutting Katniss's arm apparently, and blood's going all over. Katniss is passing out. Then I think Johanna must run off into the woods. I was actually confused. I got 2 pages in and I realized, wait a minute, what happened to Johanna? And I had to go back and find the actual passage where she ran off into the woods, and I think Katniss was starting to black out and heard the footsteps going away, and that's all we get. But Katniss gets up, puts some moss on her arm, and starts moving off into the woods herself. And then Finnick comes crashing through the trees, and he's got the green ointment all over him, so he's kind of camouflaged. Of course, at this point, Katniss thinks that she's been betrayed, and that Finnick and Johanna planned this and are now coming to do them in. Katniss gets tangled up in the wire. She falls down, she gets untangled, and then she begins following the wire back to the tree because now she's worried about Peeta. I believe at this point she heard a cannon blast, so someone died. She finds BT, who's unconscious, and she notices that he has a knife that's wrapped up in wire. Now, I'm actually not sure at this point who and how he got knocked unconscious, let alone who actually did attack Katniss, now that I think about it. But she thinks he tried to maybe stab the force field with the knife, and then his whole plan comes. She figures out his own plan, but basically, if he was trying to connect the wire to the force field, does that mean the line of wire that was going out to the beach was necessary, or was that just a distraction, a fake, because he knew the Capitol was watching, and he didn't want them to know his real plan? So, what I said earlier about him saying it out loud was probably a feint. All right, Katniss hears Peeta. She's not strong enough to fight at this point. She's losing a lot of blood, and she basically decides the way she's going to save him is to just draw the attention of the others away from Peeta. So she starts shouting, and she has her bow. Enobaria and Finnick show up, and Katniss has got her arrow aimed at Enobaria. She's going to fire, and then it all starts clicking in her mind, and she realizes that BT was trying to basically connect the electricity to the force field. So she quickly wraps her arrow in wire, and then she turns and shoots the arrow up at the chink in the force field. And just as it hits, of course, that's exactly when the lightning comes down, and um, end of chapter. So this was a very intense section, and I realized that the end was coming very fast, this being chapter 26, but um, somehow I just still didn't feel like this was the end. Like there's got to be more that happens in these games. They haven't gotten down to 3 or 4 uh, victors yet. So we will see you in the next and last chapter of Catching Fire.